My name is Rocio Sanchez Flores Moss, the author. I am the daughter of Andres Sanchez Flores and Ella. My father was an artist who worked in all the mediums that defined the Mexican mural movement, which lasted for about 50 years. It began in 1920 after the Mexican Revolution and continued until 1970s. He also taught the techniques and the methods of this type of art, and he created many works of art, which are in Mexico, the United States, and in Australia. My father was considered a genius in several different ways. The first time that I became aware of this was a newspaper article that was written in Mexico. It stated that Diego Rivera was famous for discovering new artistic geniuses. And it said in the 1930s in Detroit, he discovered the latest artistic genius, and it's Andres Sanchez Flores, and he's also an excellent chemist. And so that's how it came about that the reference to him being a genius. But he excelled in many different ways, especially in 6 different ways that would be considered genius. The first was as a chemist, and there are photographs of my father with Frida Kahlo, where in Detroit, Michigan, he was in charge of seeing that the chemistry of the pigments and the walls that were prepared for the fresco that Diego was to paint were just right. The chemistry of it is very important because the fresco, the wall is wet when the pigments are applied, and then there is a period of time that it dries, and that's what makes it last, like the famous frescoes that last for centuries. And so he was in charge of doing the chemical analysis of this. In fact, Diego very soon at that point began to refer to my father. He always called him Yai. He said, Yai is my personal chemist. The second area he excelled was an art professor. And he, along with Diego Rivera, Frida Kahlo, and many other notable artists, taught at the Esmeralda, which was a school of art in Mexico that was preparing future generations in this particular type of art form. I had the opportunity when I was in Mexico to interview some of his previous students, who at the time now are very well-known artists in themselves. One, Rita Lasso, remembered my father saying that he would like to speak with her after class. And so she says, Maestro Sanchez Flores asked me if I wanted to work on a mural that Diego Rivera was painting. And then she went to recall that he selected students that had very high skills and gave them an opportunity and then assigned them to a task in the work area and so that they could learn. And what was really important to her was that he then paid very close attention to the type of work that the student was doing. And so when he saw that they mastered that skill, he would give them another task to do. And so this way, the student continued to learn and to gain new skills. And that is that's a genius teacher. The others that talked about him, they ended up being called los tres Fridos, the 3 Fridos. And the reason for this is because they principally studied with Maestra Frida Kahlo. And what they recalled about my father's classes, all of them recalled that the one class that he would take them out to gather different dirts. And then after they gathered them, they would go back to a lab that he had put together, and there they would grind, for example, the ochre dirt, which is a real strong red dirt. that has been used, in frescoes ever since mankind discovered it. And so they would grind these, and then they had something. They did not have a lot of money, most of these students, so this provided them with a lot of tools that they could use immediately. But what they remembered also was that these were tools that they continued to use up until the time that I, interviewed them. The third way that he was a genius, considered a genius, was as a restorer. And in the prehistoric works, as well as the modern Mexican murals at the time, considered priceless works of art in Mexico. And the first one that came about was, as a result, Diego Rivera was painting a mural in the Bellas Artes. When you go into Bellas Artes, you see a magnificent staircase that opens up in both directions, and the artwork is there. Someone who did not agree with Diego Rivera threw acid on the work that had just been finished and destroying quite a big section of it. So my father was asked to see if he could restore it, which he did. It was approximately 600 meters of restoration, which is a very large area. The quality of the work that he did was such that then Bellas Artes said, "You are the national restorer of our works of art." And so he began doing tremendous amount of work in that area, so much that he could not do it all by himself, especially because he was also being involved in many other things. And so he began to bring his students and teach them these techniques so that the works could be restored. These were in Mexico City, but he also was asked to restore the works of Orozco done in Guadalajara, and these are a UNESCO site now, and have to be kept very precisely done. So he was a genius in that field. He was sent by the Mexican government when they discovered the ruins in Bonampak and their Mayan ruins. Inside of them there were murals that were still vibrant in color, much of it. And so his job was to go and determine how could this be possible, that they could have survived in the jungle for so many centuries. And then also how to be able to make sure that they would remain for future generations to see. He also had the keys to Teotihuacan, which is one of the most famous and largest of the prehistoric sites in Mexico City. And again, his job was to go in and to study the frescoes. He wrote a paper that is then part of the information that Bellas Artes has, if anyone is interested in pursuing that. The fourth way, he was a muralist and a genius in that. And I think that the example that I like to share with people is a painting that is called Water, the Origin of Life. And this painting was done in what is called the Cárcamo de Lerma. So it's like an indention in the ground where the Rio Lerma used to flow. The water from that was then diverted to serve Mexico City. So Rena Lasso was the one that shared very specific information with me about that. She said, Maestro Rivera said, "This is impossible. You can't have a fresco where water's running over it." But my father, who was the person that was creating the pigments and the preparing walls, did not have the same opinion. So Diego said, "Okay, well, we'll paint it. It'll probably last 10 to 15 years. And Rena said, "We are very fortunate that it lasted many more years, to the point that the government then diverted the water. And so today people can go and visit in Chapultepec and see this great work of art." The fifth way he was an artist is a mural that he painted here in Bossier City, and it covers 412 years of the history of Bossier City. He did this with one other painter. Together they did it. So I think it's important for the people in the area of Shreveport, of Louisiana, to know the work that he did. And the sixth and last ways that he's considered a genius is that he was a mentor and a mine of information who freely shared his skills and knowledge with anyone, whether they were young children, adults, whether they were educated or not, whether they were interested in art or not. If they showed an interest, he would stop what he was doing and share information with them. And this is a beautiful aspect of a genius. My father was inspired by the opportunities that life presented to him. And I like to share something that he said in 1975. You see, compadre, Rivera, Orozco, and Siqueiros were to us the great ones. Wherever they worked or wherever they stayed, anyone who could came to watch, to listen, to learn. Some came to be close to them and to wonder. Many, including myself, became disciples of this artistic revolution. Yes. Oh, yes. Those were great days for art and for my people. I am very happy and grateful that I was permitted to live during this time. So I must say thanks to life and to the many who gave to my days purpose and meaning. A great thanks.